The fog rolled through the Douglas firs like something alive, pooling in the ravines below Thunder Creek Trail. I'd been a backcountry ranger for 11 years, and I knew that particular quality of silence, the kind that makes you check your radio twice to make sure it's actually on. It was October 23rd when I got the call about Marcus Webb, day hiker 34, failed to return from a solo trek to Park Creek Pass. His car sat alone at the trailhead, keys on the driver's seat, a detail that bothered me more than it should have. People don't lock their keys inside intentionally, not when they're planning to come back. I headed out at first light with my field pack and tracker's instinct, expecting the usual: twisted ankle, dead phone, maybe hypothermia if he'd gotten wet. The trail was carpeted in cedar needles, still damp from morning condensation. Chickadees called from the canopy. Everything felt normal until mile marker 7, where I found his camp and the prints. Marcus's tent stood intact but unzipped, the flap moving slightly in the breeze. His sleeping bag lay half out, still in its stuff sack. A camp stove sat upright, propane canister attached, unused. His boots remained lined up outside the vestibule, laces still tied. I've seen panic departures before. This wasn't that. I documented everything with my camera: the scattered granola bars, the water filter hanging from a bear line, the journal open to a blank page with his pen lying across it. Then I began my perimeter check, moving in expanding circles the way I'd been trained. Standard protocol for missing persons: secure the scene, look for direction of travel, check for blood or signs of struggle. 50 yards northeast, I found the first track. The ground was soft there, a seep where snowmelt kept the soil permanently damp. The print measured 17 inches long, maybe 7 wide at the ball. 5 clear toe impressions. The depth suggested significant weight, unevenly distributed, the deepest point at the heel and outer edge, the way you'd see if something was moving uphill at an angle. I knelt beside it, pulled out my field ruler, took photographs from 4 angles. My training said bear. Black bears were common here. Grizzlies less so but possible. But the toe spread was wrong. The stride length, I found 3 more prints heading upslope, measured nearly 6 feet. Bears don't walk like that. Not on 2 legs, not consistently, not leaving a track this clear. I radioed it in to dispatch. Chilliwack, this is Ranger Dalton, over. Static, then Sarah's voice. Go ahead, Dalton. I've got the missing hikers camp at coordinates 48.6317, 121.0541. Subject not present. Camp appears abandoned in non-standard fashion. I'm seeing tracks that are unusual, requesting additional personnel and possibly SAR activation. Copy that. Describe unusual. I looked at the print again. In 11 years, I'd tracked elk, cougar, bear, and plenty of lost humans. I'd written reports on avalanche recoveries and cliff falls. I'd pulled bodies from rivers and talked down suicidal campers. I knew how to use precise language. Large bipedal tracks, approximately 17 inches, heading northeast into the drainage. Stride length inconsistent with human, not matching any known wildlife profile. A pause. You're saying not human. Correct. And not bear. Correct. Another pause. Longer. Stand by your position. Do not proceed upslope. Sergeant Morrison is en route. ETA 90 minutes. I stayed with the camp, ate an energy bar, drank water from my reservoir. The forest had that October quality. Gold light slanting through the canopy, the smell of decomposing leaves and fir resin. A raven landed in a snag above me, watched for a moment, then left without a sound. I've never believed in Bigfoot. I grew up with the stories. Every ranger does. The Patterson-Gimlin film, the countless hoaxes, the podcasts and TV shows. I'd laughed at tourists who asked if they'd see one. Always gave the same answer. You'll see black bears, possibly a cougar if you're lucky, and definitely mosquitoes. But I believe in evidence. And the evidence said something heavy and bipedal had walked through here, recently enough that the edges of the prints hadn't collapsed and it had been near Marcus Webb's abandoned camp. I photographed the tracks again, measured the stride between them, and waited. Morrison arrived with 2 other rangers I didn't know well, Tessa Kim from the East District and a younger guy named Aaron who looked fresh from the academy. They examined the prints without speaking at first, each taking their own photos, their own measurements. Morrison was ex-military, mid-50s, the kind of ranger who could read a landscape like text. He knelt beside the clearest print, studying the compression patterns in the soil, This was made within the last 12 hours, he said. Soil's still holding shape. Any rain, and this would be gone. Marcus was last seen at the visitor center 2 days ago, I said. Signed the trail register at 3 p.m. on the 21st. So whatever made this came through after he left the camp. Morrison stood, looked upslope toward the drainage. Or while he was here. Tessa was examining the tent. No signs of struggle. No blood. His pack's gone. The frame's here, but the pack itself is missing. Water bottle's gone. First aid kit gone. He left prepared, Aaron offered. Or left quickly but smart, I corrected. There's a difference. Morrison walked the perimeter I'd already covered, then continued further, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times. We followed. He found 3 more tracks, each spaced impossibly far apart, heading upslope into denser timber. Whatever this is, it's big, he said finally. And it was moving with purpose, not wandering. What do we tell SAR? Tessa asked. That was the question. Standard protocol required we activate search and rescue for a missing hiker, but standard protocol didn't account for this, for tracks that couldn't exist, for a situation that would sound insane on paper. Morrison pulled out his radio. Chilliwack, this is Morrison. Requesting immediate supervisor contact. Code Gray situation. Code Gray. I'd never heard it used. It meant, situation outside standard operating procedures, requires administrative decision. We waited 30 minutes. The light shifted, the forest growing dimmer though it was only early afternoon. The fog was returning, threading through the trees from the west. Finally, Morrison's radio crackled. Morrison, this is District Ranger Chen. Situation? Morrison described everything. The camp, the missing hiker, the tracks. His language was careful, clinical. He never said the word Bigfoot. He said unknown bipedal entity, likely wildlife, species undetermined. Chen's response was immediate. Pull back to the trailhead. I'm implementing a temporary area closure effective immediately. No personnel proceed beyond Marker 7 until further notice. What about the missing hiker? I asked. Morrison held up a hand. Chen, Dalton is asking about the subject. The subject is declared lost in backcountry with unknown hazard present. We're not sending teams in until we understand the situation. I'm contacting County Sheriff and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. This goes up the chain. Just like that, Marcus Webb became secondary to the thing that had walked near his camp. We packed out, marking the trail every 100 yards with closure notices. By the time we reached the parking lot, 2 sheriff's vehicles and an unmarked SUV were already there. Men in windbreakers with FWS badges were unloading equipment, camera traps, audio recorders, something that looked like military-grade thermal imaging. Morrison pulled me aside. You saw it first. They're going to want a full statement. I saw tracks. That's right, you saw tracks, you followed protocol, you reported evidence, that's all. But we both knew it wasn't all. Something was up there, and Marcus Webb had met it. They kept me at the ranger station until dark, taking my statement 3 times. Different people, same questions. Describe the tracks. What time did you find them? Did you see anything else? Could it have been a bear? Could it have been fabricated? I answered everything the same way. At 8 p.m. they let me go home, told me the area would remain closed pending investigation. I drove back to my cabin outside Marble Mount, ate cold pizza, tried to sleep. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. Morrison, get dressed. Chen wants you back at the site. Why? Thermal picked up something. Large heat signature. Bipedal movement pattern. It's moving down from the drainage. I met them at the trailhead at 3 a.m. There were more vehicles now. State police, more FWS personnel, someone from the university with wildlife biology on their jacket. They'd set up a command post in the parking lot, laptops glowing inside a canvas tent. Morrison and I went in with 2 FWS agents, armed this time carrying rifles and sidearms. The regulation had changed in 6 hours. Whatever this was, they were treating it as potentially dangerous. We moved in darkness, headlamps off using night vision that rendered the forest in shades of green. The trail felt different at night, older, less human. The fog had settled into the valleys like water, and we moved through it silently. At mile marker 6, Morrison stopped us. He'd heard something. We waited, listening. The forest was never truly silent. There was always wind, always branches, always distant water. But beneath that, something else. A low vocalization, almost subsonic. Not a growl, not quite a call. something between them. It came from upslope, maybe 200 yards. One of the FWS agents, her name tag said Reeves, adjusted her thermal scope. "I've got it," she whispered. 11 o'clock, 180 meters. It's stationary. She handed me the scope. Through the thermal imaging, the world became heat signatures. Cold trees in black and gray, warmer soil in dark blue, and there, upslope, a massive shape in orange and yellow, roughly humanoid, sitting. "Height estimate?" Morrison asked. "Based on the surrounding trees? 7 feet, maybe more. That's sitting down." We watched it for 10 minutes. It didn't move. Occasionally, the heat signature would shift slightly, an arm moving, maybe the head turning, but it remained in place. "It's watching us," I said quietly. Reeves nodded. "It knows we're here." The other agent, whose name I never learned, adjusted his rifle. "Orders are to observe only unless it approaches or shows aggression." Morrison made a decision. "Dalton, you're the one who found the scene. Call out to it." "Call out? If there's any chance Marcus Webb is up there, injured with this thing, we need to try." I understood. He wanted to see how it would react to human voice. I moved forward slightly, cupped my hands. "Marcus Webb, if you can hear me, this is the National Park Service. We're here to help." My voice echoed through the drainage and faded. The heat signature on the thermal scope moved. It stood. The shape rose and rose, the thermal bloom stretching upward until it measured at least 9 feet tall. It stood there for 3 seconds. Then it turned and moved upslope with a speed that seemed impossible for something that size, disappearing into the dense timber in seconds. "Jesus Christ," Reeves whispered. Morrison keyed his radio. "Chen, this is Morrison. Contact confirmed. Subject is real. Location verified. Recommend immediate expansion of closure area." We stood in the fog, listening to the forest settle back into its old silence. Marcus Webb was still out there, and now we knew he wasn't alone. They pulled us back again at dawn. The closure area expanded to 15 square miles, the entire Thunder Creek drainage and adjacent ridgelines. No one in, no one out. The official statement said, "Wildlife hazard investigation." The news picked it up by noon. I spent the day in briefings. Fish and Wildlife brought in a primatologist from the University of Washington, Dr. Elena Vasquez, mid-40s, with a background in great ape behavior and conservation biology. She reviewed my photos of the tracks, measurements, timeline. "The stride length alone suggests something outside normal human range," she said, pulling up comparison images on her laptop. "Even accounting for someone very tall running at full speed, you wouldn't get this distribution. And the depth, the toe spread, this is consistent with significant weight on a flexible foot structure." "Consistent with what?" Chen asked. Vasquez hesitated. "In academia, certain words could end careers. Consistent with an undocumented bipedal primate. Similar to reported characteristics of what's colloquially called Sasquatch or Bigfoot, but I prefer unknown hominid species." The room went quiet. Chen leaned back. "Doctor, I need you to be very clear. Are you telling me this is real?" "I'm telling you the evidence suggests something biological, something large, and something that doesn't match any currently recognized species. Whether that's a remnant population of Gigantopithecus, an undiscovered hominid, or something else entirely, we'd need more data." "What about Marcus Webb?" I asked. "Are we assuming he encountered this thing?" "Based on the timeline and location, it's probable," Vasquez said. "The question is whether the encounter was incidental or interactive and whether he's still alive." Morrison spread a topographic map across the table. "The thermal tracking shows the subject moved northwest, deeper into the backcountry. If Webb is with it, voluntarily or otherwise, he's getting further from help with every hour. We can't send Sayar in blind," Chen said. "Not with an unknown entity that size showing awareness of our presence." "So we abandon him?" The words came out harder than I intended. Chen met my eyes. "We're not abandoning anyone, but I won't send people into a situation we don't understand. This thing stood up when you called out. It responded to human presence. That suggests intelligence, and intelligence means unpredictability." Vasquez nodded. "If this is a relict hominid population, which the evidence suggests, they've survived by avoiding human contact. They'd be extremely sensitive to intrusion. Sending in a large search party could provoke territorial defense behavior, or it could help us find Marcus," I said. Morrison put a hand on my shoulder. "Tom, I know what you're thinking, but we have to consider the possibility that Marcus is already gone, and if we push this thing into a defensive position, we could have more casualties." The briefing continued for another hour. They brought in wildlife conflict specialists, law enforcement coordinators, even someone from the State Emergency Management Office. Everyone agreed, proceed with extreme caution, but caution takes time, and time was something Marcus Webb might not have. That evening, I sat in my truck outside the station, staring at the photos on my camera, the tracks, the abandoned camp, the thermal image of something standing 9 feet tall in the fog. In 11 years, I'd learned that the wilderness operates by its own rules older than human law, older than protocol. Sometimes those rules demand sacrifice. Sometimes they demand we acknowledge our place in the order of things. But I'd also learned that we're responsible for the people who enter these spaces trusting we'll bring them home. My phone buzzed. Morrison. Chen approved a small reconnaissance team for first light. You, me, Vasquez, and Reeves. We go in light. We go quiet. Find evidence of Webb or the subject. No engagement. I texted back. Copy. Tomorrow we'd go deeper. We moved out at dawn, the four of us, carrying minimal gear. Vasquez had insisted on coming. I can't analyze behavior from photographs, she'd said. Reeves brought the thermal equipment and a tranquilizer rifle. Just in case. Morrison carried the satellite communicator. I carried the guilt. We bypassed Marcus's camp and headed upslope, following the direction the thermal signature had moved. The terrain grew steeper, the timber denser. Old growth here, Douglas firs 6 feet across, hemlock that had been standing when Lewis and Clark came through. 2 miles in, Vasquez stopped us. She was examining a young cedar, maybe 20 feet tall. The bark had been stripped in vertical lines methodically from about 7 feet up to 9 feet. Underneath, the cambium layer was exposed, recently torn. This is feeding behavior, she said quietly. Cedar cambium is edible, nutritious. Bears do this, but they tend to be messier, more random. This is selective. How recent? Morrison asked. She touched the exposed wood, rubbed the moisture between her fingers. Hours, maybe since last night. We continued. The forest changed character as we climbed. More open understory, massive fallen logs creating natural corridors. The sound profile changed too. Fewer birds. The silence we'd all learned to recognize. Then Reeves held up a hand. Through the trees ahead, maybe 50 yards, there was movement. We froze. Vasquez slowly brought up her binoculars. Her hand stayed steady, but I saw her breath catch. It's the subject, she whispered, and it has someone with it. She handed me the binoculars. Through the glass, I saw it clearly for the first time. The figure was massive, 8, maybe 9 feet tall, covered in dark brown hair that caught the morning light. The proportions were wrong for human. Shoulders too broad, arms too long, torso too thick. It moved with a kind of careful deliberation, each footfall placed precisely, and beside it, walking, was Marcus Webb. He was alive, dirty, bearded, limping slightly, but alive, and he was walking voluntarily, not being dragged or pursued. As I watched, the creature, I didn't know what else to call it, stopped and looked back at Marcus, waiting for him to catch up. Jesus, Morrison breathed. It's helping him. We watched for 5 minutes. The creature led Marcus to a fallen log, actually gestured for him to sit. Then it moved off into the undergrowth, returning moments later with something in its hands. Plants. It placed them beside Marcus. Vasquez was recording on her phone, hands trembling. This is incredible, she whispered. That's caregiving behavior. It's not holding him captive. It's protecting him. From what? Reeves asked. From us, maybe, I said. The pieces fell into place. Marcus had left his camp quickly but prepared, taking his pack, supplies, not running from the creature but with it. Maybe he'd injured his ankle, couldn't make it out on his own, and something impossible had decided to help him. Morrison raised his radio, but Vasquez grabbed his wrist. Wait, if we call this in, they'll send everyone. Armed personnel, capture equipment. You saw how it reacted last time to human presence. We can't leave him out here, Morrison said. He doesn't look like he needs leaving, I said. Look at him, he's calm. The thing is feeding him, helping him move. If we storm in now, we might provoke exactly the conflict we've been trying to avoid. So what do you suggest? Morrison asked. We let it bring him out, Vasquez said. We track at a distance. If it's moving him toward safety, helping him, then the ethical thing is to let that happen. And if it's not, then we intervene. But right now, Marcus Webb is safer with that creature than he would be in the middle of an armed extraction. Morrison looked at each of us. Then he lowered the radio. We observe, but if anything changes, We move. We followed them for 3 hours, keeping distance, staying downwind, watching something impossible care for someone who should have been afraid. By midday, we'd tracked them 2 more miles northwest, generally toward the drainage's lower slopes, back toward civilization. Marcus was moving better now, though still slow. The creature stayed close, occasionally making soft vocalizations that Marcus seemed to respond to with nods or gestures. Then Morrison's radio crackled with Chen's voice. "Morrison, what's your status?" We'd been out of contact too long. Protocol required check-ins every 2 hours. Morrison moved away from the group before responding. "We're tracking northwest from the last known position. We've made observations." "What kind of observations?" Morrison looked at us. This was the moment. Whatever he said next would determine what happened. "We've located Marcus Webb," he said carefully. "He's alive and mobile. Outstanding. What's your position?" "We'll send in the extraction team." "Chen, wait. The situation is, complex." "Explain complex." Morrison took a breath. "Webb is not alone. The subject we tracked is with him, and it appears to be helping him navigate back toward the trailhead." A long silence. Then, "Say again? It's helping him?" "Affirmative. We've observed caregiving behavior. No signs of aggression or restraint. Webb appears to be cooperating voluntarily." Another pause. Longer this time. In the background, I could hear voices. Commotion. "Morrison, I'm patching in Colonel Briggs from Fish and Wildlife and Captain DeMarco from State Police. Stand by." The radio went quiet. Vasquez was still filming, documenting everything. Reeves kept the thermal scope trained on the 2 figures ahead of us, now resting near a creek. When the radio came back, there were multiple voices. Chen introduced the others, then Briggs spoke. "Ranger Morrison, this is Colonel Briggs. I need to understand the situation clearly. You have visual on an unknown bipedal entity, large size, exhibiting intelligent behavior?" "Correct." "And it has direct contact with a civilian?" "Correct, but non-violent contact. Protective behavior." DeMarco's voice cut in. "We have a duty to extract that civilian. Whatever this thing is, we can't leave an injured hiker in its custody." "It's not custody," Vasquez said into Morrison's radio. "This is Dr. Vasquez. Based on behavioral observation, this appears to be an autonomous interaction. The subject is not restraining or controlling Mr. Webb. If anything, it's guiding him to safety. Doctor, with respect, you're asking us to trust an unidentified animal with a human life. I'm asking you to recognize that storming in with armed personnel will likely provoke a defensive response. Right now, everyone is safe. Change that dynamic and we risk casualties on both sides." Briggs, "What's your recommendation, Doctor?" "Continue observation at distance. Let the subject complete what it appears to be doing, bringing Webb out. We maintain tracking position, ready to intervene if needed, but we don't escalate unless the situation changes." Silence on the radio. I could imagine the scene at the command post. Officials weighing protocol against unprecedented circumstances, legal liability against scientific opportunity, duty against wisdom. Finally, Chen, "Morrison, you have command discretion until 1600 hours. If Webb is not on a clear path to extraction by then, we're coming in. Understood?" "Understood." "And Morrison, if anything goes wrong, this decision comes back on all of you." "Copy that." We continued tracking. The sun moved across the sky, filtering through the canopy in shifting patterns. The creature kept moving, kept helping Marcus navigate the difficult terrain. Around 1400 hours, we heard it, the sound of distant voices, hikers on the main trail. The creature heard it too. It stopped, listened, then seemed to make a decision. It guided Marcus to a dense thicket, gestured for him to stay, then moved back upslope, away from the voices, away from humanity. In 30 seconds, it vanished into the forest. Marcus waited 5 minutes, then limped toward the trail. We reached Marcus 10 minutes after the creature left. He was sitting on a stump near the trail junction, drinking from his water bottle, looking more tired than terrified. When he saw us approaching, he didn't look surprised. "I figured you'd be tracking me," he said quietly. Morrison knelt beside him. "Marcus, are you injured? Do you need immediate medical attention?" "Ankle. Twisted it pretty bad on the 2nd day, nothing broken." He looked at each of us, his gaze settling on me. "You found my camp." 3 days ago, I said. "We've had teams looking for you." "I know. I heard the helicopters." He paused. "That's why it took me deeper. To keep me safe." Vasquez moved closer. "Marcus, can you tell us what happened? From the beginning?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking back toward the direction the creature had gone. Then he started talking. "I just set up camp that first night. Heard something moving in the trees, big, careful. I thought Bear grabbed my spray. Then I saw it, just standing there, maybe 40 yards out watching me. What did you do? Morrison asked. Froze. Didn't know what to do. It wasn't acting aggressive, just curious. We watched each other for maybe 5 minutes. Then it made this sound. Low, kind of melodic. And it left. Did you try to leave? I packed up, yeah. Started hiking out that night, didn't want to wait until morning. That's when I twisted my ankle. Badly. I made it maybe a mile before I couldn't walk anymore. Set up against a tree, figured I'd try again at dawn. And the creature came back, Vasquez said. Marcus nodded. Just before dawn. I heard it moving around me in the dark. I thought, I don't know what I thought, that I was going to die maybe, but it didn't hurt me. It brought me water and a piece of bark. Then food, plants, roots, things I didn't recognize. Some of them actually helped with the pain. It fed you, I said. It kept me alive. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. When I tried to walk, it understood. It would wait for me, help me over the difficult parts. Never touched me, never forced me, just guided me. Where was it taking you? Morrison asked. Out. Away from where the helicopters were searching. I think it knew you were looking and it didn't want to be found. But it also didn't want to leave me helpless. Reeves had been quiet, but now she spoke. Did it communicate with you? Beyond the vocalizations? Gestures mostly. It's intelligent. That much is obvious. It understood when I was hurting, when I needed rest. There was one moment. He trailed off. What moment? Vasquez prompted gently. Yesterday morning. We were high up on a ridge, and we heard your team in the valley below. It looked at me, and I swear there was something in its eyes. Not animal, something else. Fear, maybe, or sadness. It knew that if you found us, everything would change. What did you do? I asked. I could have called out. You would have heard me. But I didn't. Marcus met my eyes. I chose not to, because I understood something up there in those 3 days. This thing, this being, it exists outside our world by choice. It survived by staying hidden, and me calling for help would have destroyed that. Morrison stood. Marcus, we need to get you to medical. But I have to ask, are you saying you don't want us to pursue this? You were missing for 3 days in the company of an unknown entity. Protocol requires investigation. Protocol. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to investigate? Fine. But know this. That thing saved my life, and the only threat it ever faced was from us. They evacuated Marcus by helicopter that afternoon. Mild dehydration, sprained ankle, exposure, nothing that wouldn't heal. Physically, he was fine, but something in him had changed. I saw it in his eyes, the way you see it in people who've experienced something that can't be reduced to words or reports. The official statement said Marcus Webb had become disoriented after injuring his ankle, managed to find shelter in wild edibles, and self-rescued to the trail. No mention of the tracks, the thermal imaging, or the 72 hours he spent in the company of something impossible. Fish and Wildlife kept the area closed for another week. They set up camera traps, audio recorders, collected hair samples from the stripped cedar bark. Dr. Vasquez wrote a preliminary report that carefully avoided certain words while documenting everything we'd observed. The samples came back as unknown primate, closest genetic match to human, but with significant divergence. The report was classified and sent up channels I don't have clearance to know about. The news cycle moved on. Missing hiker found safe in North Cascades was a one-day story, buried by politics and wildfires and all the noise humanity generates to avoid silence. Morrison and I never spoke directly about what we'd seen. Sometimes in the ranger station our eyes would meet and we'd share that look, the one that says some experiences exist beyond language, beyond proof, beyond the comfortable categories we use to organize reality. I've been back to Thunder Creek a dozen times since. The area reopened, hikers returned, the forest settled back into its ancient rhythms. Sometimes I stop at mile marker 7, where Marcus's camp was, and I listen. The fog still rolls through the Douglas firs. Ravens still call from the snags. And sometimes, if the wind is right and I'm very still, I hear things that aren't in any field guide, sounds that suggest the forest holds its secrets carefully, sharing them only with those who understand the responsibility. Vasquez left academia 6 months later. She's working for a private wildlife foundation now, doing camera trap research in remote areas of the Pacific Northwest. We email occasionally. She never says what she's looking for, but I know. Marcus Webb moved to Oregon. He writes for a conservation nonprofit, advocacy pieces about wilderness protection and the importance of leaving some places unknown. He sent me a message once, just 3 sentences. Some things are real precisely because they're impossible to prove. The forest chose to trust me. I won't betray that. I think about that often. About trust. About the line between discovery and violation. About the difference between knowing something and needing to capture it. Last week I got a call from a new ranger, fresh to the district. She'd found tracks near Copper Ridge. Unusual, bipedal, measuring 17 inches. She wanted to know protocol. I could hear the excitement in her voice, the certainty that she'd stumbled onto something significant. I told her to document, measure, photograph, file the report, and then I told her something else. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to remind us that the world is larger than what we've named, and smaller than what we think we control. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is bear witness, and then step back. She was quiet for a moment. Did you ever find anything like that? Once, I said, and I learned that not every discovery needs to become a headline. The forest keeps its secrets, and those of us who walk its depths learn to keep them too, because some knowledge isn't about possession, it's about respect. And some beings deserve to remain in the silence they've chosen, undisturbed, unproven, alive in the places where the wilderness still remembers how to breathe. There are still territories beyond our maps, still creatures in the shadows, and maybe the true miracle is leaving them there. The wilderness doesn't ask to be understood. It asks to be respected. Some stories aren't about answers. They're about learning which questions not to ask.